This video is we're going to look at how to compute interest expense, how to fill in an amortization schedule. If you have a mortgage, then you're familiar with what an amortization schedule is. And basically, it's just a schedule of your payments, the interest charges, and then the ending balance over time. Now, we're looking here at a couple of different options if you were to, say, buy a house for $500,000. And you could look at the top here, and here's all of your factors. So you're going to purchase a house for $500,000. You're going to put it 20% down, which is 100,000, which is, a lot for most people your age. But I say this because if you put less than 80% down, you will have to, in addition to paying principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, you will have to pay what's called private mortgage insurance, unless you're a veteran. And then you can get a government backed loan, a VA loan, for the full purchase price, and you won't have to pay private mortgage insurance. The government will take care of that in exchange for your service. All right, so our principal is going to be $400,000 because we're going to put down $100,000 and we're going to have to finance $400,000. The yearly interest rate is 7.2%. I think that's fairly close to the market right now. And the term is going to be 360 months or 30 years. Now, with a mortgage, the interest is calculated monthly. And so what happens is you start with your beginning balance. Now, interest is principal amount times interest rate expressed in a year times time expressed as a year, a fraction of that year, or in year terms. So if it's going to be if interest is calculated on a monthly basis, that means that the time is going to be 1 divided by 12. So you can see here that we've got a schedule and our payment. And this is one of the things about Excel is that you can do this payment D4. And another Excel is you can tailor it so that instead of hard coding things, you can make changes without having to redo the formula. So payment rate, that's going to be 7.2%. Notice I've divided by 12 because really that is the monthly rate. And the number of periods is 360, and the present value is the amount, the principal amount. And so we get payments, and this is only principal and interest. It does not include taxes and insurance. But if you were going to buy a $500,000 house, the payment would be $2,710 a month, which is, I believe, $32,517. You could probably tack on another $500 or so, $500 for interest or for taxes and insurance. The mortgage company will take that out and pay it for you, but you have to pay that amount. So your payments may be, let's say, $3,100 when all is said and done. This is for a 30-year loan. All right, so the interest amount, again, we are going to factor in, instead of hard coding thing, we're going to pull the formulas from certain cells. So this is just basically if C10, which is C10 is greater than 0, in other words, a positive number, then we're going to calculate interest. That just means it's going to show you down the line. When it's paid off, it'll stop calculating interest. Okay, so the interest is going to be 400,000 times 7.2% divided by 12. Okay, and that means that you're going to pay interest of $2,393. Now, your principal and interest payment is going to be $2,709.74 every month. And so the difference, the ending balance is going to be the difference between these two numbers. So if you look down here in Excel, it's going to show you that it's minus 316.41. So your principal balance is going to be reduced by that amount. So this formula is going to be beginning balance plus interest plus a negative number or subtracting, all right? In other words, this increases your balance, this reduces your balance. The net effect is going to be that your balance goes from $400,000 to $399,683. Not a huge amount. Out of 2709, you're only reducing your principal balance by $361. But over time, your principal balance will go down. And since you're calculating the interest on your principal balance, the interest amount will go down. So you see here, it's a couple dollars less, almost a couple dollars less. So same thing. Okay, so the ending balance at the end of last month is the beginning balance for month 2. We're going to calculate the interest again. This times 7.072 divided by 12 is going to be your interest. Payment stays the same. So now we have reduced it by 318. So the first month was not 318, it was 316.41. So again, not much difference. And so it's going to take you 30 years, of course, to pay this off. But by the time the 30 years rolls around, and most likely you will not have this mortgage because you will refinance. I'm sure interest rates hopefully will go down. So it's reversed. Look at this. The last 12 months, your total interest is 1230. That's less than the interest you paid on the first amount, but that's because your balance continues to go down. So your principal is going to be taking more of a chunk out of your payment is going to be taking more of a chunk out of your principal. So it's reversed down here. This is a 15-year mortgage. All right. And you can probably get a break, maybe 0.5%. I'm just guessing here, so don't hold me to these terms. But you've got a payment now of 35.24 because you're paying it off in 180 months. And your total interest, if you paid this for 30 years, is going to be $576,000 versus total interest here is $234,000. But look how much you would have to come up with in addition each month, another $814. So if you were to tack on a $400 payment for your insurance and taxes, you're looking at about $3,900 compared to $3,100. But you're also paying it off at a much higher, faster rate. So you get a little break on the interest, but look, your first month, you're paying down your mortgage almost $1,300. So after 15 years, this is all paid off, which is nice. But the question is this the best strategy? Now, in the past, and this will become a factor again after 2025, I think, when the tax cuts that were enacted several years ago, they go away. So right now, you have no dependents. You don't get a break for dependents, and you have a fairly large uh, deduction. Okay, standard deduction. So right now, if you're single, you get a standard deduction of $13,850. If you're married filing jointly, you get a standard deduction of $27,700. So the first 12 months, you would be paying interest of $32,000. So you would get a break. So, and once you start itemizing, so this would allow you to itemize because your interest payments, you can deduct interest for a home mortgage. Your interest payments would be more than your standard deduction. And that allows you to throw in other things like state sales taxes in Tennessee. If you're in other states, you could use state taxes. If you have a lot of medical expenses, more than 7.5% of your AGI, you can throw those in. You can throw in any other kind of tax payments that you pay. You have charitable deductions that now would be effective that you could deduct. Um, so the difference in your total deductions compared to your standard deduction, that amount reduces your taxes. All right, so here let's go 32,516. Throw in, let's say 2 or 3,000 for taxes. So let's say it's going to be $37,000. So $37,000 in deductions because you can itemize. The amount over what your standard deduction is $9,300. And so you've reduced your taxes, you reduce your income by $9,300. And then depending upon your tax rate, let's say you're in the 20, 20% tax rate, although there isn't any, let's say the 22% tax rate. So 0.22 times this means that you'll pay $2,000 less in taxes, which means that really your net interest payment is going to be the sum of this 12 months plus your tax shield. So, in other words, you reduce your income, which is reduce your taxes. And so, really, instead of paying $36,000, it only cost, or $32,000. It's only going to cost you $30,470. Only $30,470 plus, of course, taxes and insurance. Or I'm sorry, I did that wrong. We should be looking at the interest here, not the payment. So the interest is going to be 28,000. So you still are over there, but we should be looking at 28,000. But let's say 28. Let's throw in another 5,000 for others, so that would be 33. Um, 33,000, and then this would be the sum of this. And so then we would need to subtract this. All right, so you would reduce your income by 5,300. So that's again the difference between your total deductions and what you could have taken as a standard deduction. Again, married filing joint. If you're single, then this really does help you out. You would reduce your taxes by 1116, which would mean your net interest payments are really 27,426. Still a large number, but reality. Now, the other issue here is that should you pay 814 to pay down your mortgage, over time your interest rates would go down or your interest amount would go down. You would probably get to the point where you no longer can deduct it. And then what is the market rate of return? Well, we know that the real rate of return in is about 7.2 to 7.5%, but the nominal rate is higher than that. And so this interest is actually the nominal rate because the dollars that you'll pay for this over time will be worth less. So there's a spread of maybe 3%. So the other strategy would be to take that 814, invest it in a S&P fund, and you would actually be making the difference of a spread of about 3%. You'd have to pay taxes on any gains that you got from the market, of course, but still, that might be an alternative strategy. Now, if rates go down to 5%, or I had a mortgage at 2.85%, so to me, it was worth keeping the mortgage and spending that extra amount on investing in the market. All right. So again, You can look this over. There is a file, but basically to determine this amount, you're going to first compute the interest, and that is the principal balance times the interest rate divided by 12. You're going to subtract the payment, so that's either adding a negative number or subtracting it, and that's going to give you the ending balance, and so that is the beginning balance. So you'll have something like this on the test, so you need to know this. Now, interest expense, again, is principal times rate times time. If we have principal of $10,000, our rate is 5%, and it's for 3 months. 3 months is, you can see here, 3 divided by 12. So it's 10,000 times 0.05 times 0.25, so your interest is $125. Second one, amortization. So we start with $300,000. Our rate is 7%. We're doing this over 360 months. So our payment is going to be, again, PMT, uh, and that's interest rate, number of periods, present value. Okay. And so then we're going to determine the interest, which is 300,000 times 0.07 divided by 12. And then we're going to subtract, or either add a negative number or subtract. And so the balance after we make the payment is going to go down to 299,754. And then bonds, you can see face amount, and then you can go and number of periods is 10, face amount is 5%, market rate is 4%. So if you were to sell that bond, if you had a $10,000 face amount bond and you got it with a 5% interest rate, you're going to discount those cash flow payments, and so you could actually sell the bond for more than what you uh, lent out. Okay, but then you would, of course, forego all of those interest payments. All right, so you need to be familiar with this. I have uploaded this in the content section under other. So study this. It will be on the test.